And that is all that love's about.
And we'll recall when time runs out that it only.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel Slightly Scripted, where I basically talk about anything I want to, and today we're going to be ranking and reviewing Pixar movies. And just a disclaimer, I haven't seen Elemental yet, so that movie will not be on the list. And before we start, I think it's important to note that this commentary video is just, filled with my own opinions, and the ranking is my own. Clearly, I have my own personal biases, and everyone will have different rankings and different opinions. Art is subjective, and that's okay. In other words, please don't kill me. And in fact, I made a poll for this video about, what your favorite Pixar movie was, and here are the results. It was definitely a death match between Ratatouille and The Incredibles, but Ratatouille won by a lot of votes. And before we get into the rankings, I think that it's imperative that I talk about my own history with Pixar because that really influences this list and also explains some of my biases. So I don't know if this was just me growing up, but I didn't really get movies as a kid. I loved watching them and knew vaguely that a story was being conveyed to me, but I couldn't really follow it. I don't know, if this was just because I was labeled a slower kid in school or, learned at a slower pace. But I remember as a kid, up until I was around maybe 13, 14 years old, sitting down and watching movies with grown-ups and constantly asking them questions about what was going on in the movie, like who that character was, what's their name again, where are they? Again, I loved watching movies and the visuals and the music, but I had no idea what was happening, who the characters were, what the plots were, where they were, what settings were, etc. For example, I loved the aesthetics of The Incredibles as a kid when it came out. My friend had it on DVD, we would watch it on repeat, because I just loved looking at it, even though I had no idea what was actually happening. It wasn't until I watched Monsters, Inc. for the first time on Disney Channel when I was around 13 or 14 years old that I finally watched a movie and understood everything that happened in it by myself. After that, it was like a whole new world opened up to me. I finally understood themes and characters and settings and plots. It was just an amazing experience, and it happened to be like Monsters, Inc. So that's why, I kind of have a really soft place in my heart for that movie. And I think this is another reason why the films that we're exposed to, especially in adolescence, are so nostalgic and stick with us for life, because it's the first time in our lives that we really begin to understand storytelling. Or at least that was my experience. So let me know your experience down below. And this is all to say that Pixar was really, formative in my love of films and movies and art and animation, because they were the movies that helped me understand what movies were and what they could be. After watching Monsters, Inc. that time when I was 13 or 14 years old and understood the entire thing by myself, I thought to myself, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to become a scarer. Just kidding. Of course, I wanted to work in animation and in film after watching Monsters, Inc. that time. And I even remember going on the Pixar website on the home desktop computer. But the summer that I turned 14, I just remember watching movie after movie after movie because I finally could appreciate them on a deeper level. And I specifically watched Ratatouille and Wall-E on repeat because they were rerunning basically that whole summer on cable. And Ratatouille was one of the few films I actually had on DVD because I loved it so much. And from then on, I was just, a huge Pixar fan, and still am. And this is all to highlight the fact that I have a lot of nostalgia for earlier Pixar films, which, of course brings a certain bias to the way these movies will be ranked, which is why I'm going into this whole thing. I have a lot of nostalgia for their earlier works, and I was lucky enough to live through the hand-drawn animation of the Disney Renaissance and also, this dawn of a really amazing era in computer-generated animation. But when making my ranking, I really tried to not let nostalgia get in the way, as I want to be as objective as possible, even though art is subjective. But I also have to say that, some of these older Pixar movies are, at least in my opinion, better than the movies that they're debuting now. But again, that's just my opinion. Again, please don't kill me.
That's my opinion!
So without further ado, let's get into the rankings. And before we talk about the movies, let me explain the tiers. The top tier I renamed Invincible. These movies in this tier have their faults, but otherwise, are my favorite Pixar movies. Nothing can beat them for me. Time and time again, I learned something new from them. And the visuals, like the actual animation and the art, is, just 100%. The next tier are the fun/emotional movies. They're just as good as top tier films, but they didn't make the top tier because in my mind, they're still just missing something to be like, the best of the best. The mid-tier movies are honestly like most of the movies. They're fine, they're just fine. To me, they weren't life-changing, but again, that's just my opinion. The I don't care tier speaks for itself. These are movies that I don't care about, and I don't think I'd ever actively go and watch them again if it weren't, to make this video or to just rewatch all of the movies because I felt like it. And the offensive tier / actively disliked tier also speaks for itself. These are movies that I actively want to avoid at all costs and that I actually really, really actively dislike. So when it comes to talking about the films themselves, I'm just going to, reveal them tier by tier. But we're going to start with the top tier and end with the fun / heartwarming tier. So let's go. So unsurprisingly, my two favorite top tier Pixar films are The Incredibles and WALL-E. I know WALL-E gets a lot of hate, for being ableist with the floating chairs, for example. There's like this weird message in the movie about how technology makes us lazy, when in reality it does help people, again, specifically disabled people, and that's a fair criticism. But it's still, top tier for me personally because I love the love story with WALL-E and Eve. I love their character designs. I love how they can convey so much emotion without talking. I also love the fact that in the movie they don't blame global warming on individuals or as us as consumers, but on large corporations that have lobbied and infiltrated the federal government. I thought that was really clever. I also love how they still show that the Axiom is making tons of freaking trash with the giant WALL-E robots. I also love the message of how, they need to go back to Earth and rebuild, and that Earth is our home. And I also love in the ending credits specifically, there's like these great mosaics and drawings of the humans and the robots rebuilding together and fixing the Earth together. And I love not only that they show that, this is the future, but also that they do it in an art style that reflects ancient times because it's as if the world is restarting anew. And they're using the same ancient art techniques that originally humans did before they left, on the Axiom. I just thought that was really, really smart and clever. I also think that the entire first act of the movie is just, a master class in storytelling. It's so harrowing, but so beautiful. I love the visuals. I think at the time people might have found it heavy-handed, like, okay, we get it, we're killing the planet. But those people just don't want to be confronted with the bitter truth that this is what our planet will become. And I just love how they're not, afraid to pull any punches on that visually. I could go on and on about why I love WALL-E. But personally, I just find it to be a beautiful movie, especially when it comes to the robots and the animation and visual storytelling. As for The Incredibles, it also has, pretty valid criticisms against it. For example, the villain is actually right, and there's a weird message of how, some people are just born naturally gifted and special, and that if we give everyone a trophy for just showing up, then no one will be special, and that's bad for some reason because quality is bad. I don't really get it, or at least, appreciating everyone's unique abilities is bad. It's a very messy message. But besides, that messy theming, it's just my favorite film. I think Syndrome is a really cool villain, and as a kid, him being revealed as a villain was just huge for me. It was like a huge plot twist. I love that the film is also inherently feminist without, sounding forced, unlike the second movie, which we'll get to soon. Like, Helen as a mother and wife has kind of lost herself and her spark, but then is able to not only reclaim her power as an individual, but also as a mom. Her role and identity has changed from her youth, but that doesn't make her any less valuable. And I like that she has to find herself again. As Edna says, you're Elastigirl, you'll fight, and you'll win.
Let's go! Confront the problem! Fight! Win!
I don't even want to get into the whole Edna being half Japanese and voiced by Brad Bird, but despite that, I do like her character upon rewatch, and all the side characters, in this movie help the world grow. Like Mr. Incredible's lawyers, Bob's boss, and the scene where he sees a guy getting mugged while he's being berated by this guy, and he can't do anything about it. I just think that's a really good storytelling.
The door. Get over here now. I'm not happy, Bob. Not happy.
He got away.
Good thing, too. You were this close to losing your...
I love Frozone's scene with the police. That's actually modeled from a scene from Die Hard, which I just found out recently. I love Mirage and her, femme fatale energy. That, really stuck with me as a kid.
Next time you gamble, bet your own life.
And I also like that the bad guy henchmen have some funny lines. And of course, all the side superheroes that they show along the way really helps build the world for me. I love the world of the island as well, the cave and the retrofuturism. It just felt like a really well planned out story and universe. There's just something really special about it that I can't really describe. It might just be nostalgia, but I do think that the movie is one of their best. I got a comment on my poll that said, The Incredibles was Pixar's best movie, and I definitely agree that they haven't really made anything to top that yet, at least in my opinion. And interestingly enough, I do wonder, what happened to all the people on the island? Did Syndrome just kill them? Interestingly enough as well, the concept art for Mirage, some sketches show her as maybe being Polynesian at one point. I'm honestly glad they didn't go that route, but I do wonder again, did Syndrome kill all of the people on this island? What happened to them? So going to the mid-tier, we have A Bug's Life, The Good Dino, Cars, Toy Story, Brave, Turning Red, Coco, Toy Story 2, and Soul. A Bug's Life is fine. I don't really have much to say about it, except that movie seemed to introduce the Pixar movie trope of having a vicious villain pet that doesn't talk and is animalistic for some reason. It's there in Monsters U too, where one of the sidekicks is just like an animal, even though they're all animals. I don't really get it. This later would transform into characters like Becky in Finding Dory, who just doesn't talk and is more animalistic for some reason than the other animals, but this time is a good guy. Anyway, Good Dino gets a lot of hate, but it's not that bad in my opinion upon rewatch. I mean, it's not the best movie, but I do really like Spot and how he teaches Arlo to be brave. Cars is fine, Toy Story is fine, Brave is fine. Brave was actually really contentious back in 2012 because people were comparing it to Wreck-It Ralph at the time, especially around award season for, the best animated feature at the Oscars, even though in the end of the day, they're both Disney properties. Turning Red I liked a lot, but maybe I would have liked it more if I was a bit younger. I really do like Coco, and it's, almost in the fun and emotional tier because it is so emotional. But after the whole, border crossing issue was highlighted, I started to have problems with it personally. That's just me though. I know a lot of people love this movie, and I still do, especially as someone whose grandmother had Alzheimer's and is from, a Latin American background. The movie does hold a special place in my heart. I do think some Pixar movies, though, get away with a lot because they tap into your emotions. So because they make you cry, you kind of forget that maybe it wasn't such a great movie or overlook the more pernicious aspects. But honestly, again, Coco is really good and well done, and it is, still one of my favorite Pixar movies. On the other hand, the border thing does kind of outweigh that for me because it's a really big oversight and kind of insensitive, at least in my opinion. Toy Story 2 is fine. As a kid, I really liked the first Toy Story, but as an adult, it's not very, stand outish to me. As for Soul, I love the Picasso looking afterworld, or before world, I guess. But everything else is kind of forgettable. I don't really remember it that much, and I don't think it was the movie that Pixar was hoping it to be. Moving on to the I don't care tier. I don't care about Cars 3, Finding Dory, Inside Out, Onward, Toy Story 4, Toy Story 3, and Lightyear. The cat in Lightyear is funny, but that's about all I can remember from the film. Onward does touch on interesting themes about loss and what it's like to remember someone you can't really remember. And of course it falls into the Pixar movie trope of making you cry. But in the end, I just don't really care for it all that much. Maybe if I was younger, it'd be higher on the list though. Same goes for Inside Out. I know people, freaking love this movie, but for me, it's fine. I know they're making a second one, and I'm pretty sure that's going to go on this tier as well. I don't care. As for Finding Dory, I'm sure it's fine. I've seen multiple times at this point, and I just don't care about Dory. I'm sorry. Personally, I'd be more interested in a Finding Nemo sequel that's about Nemo. For some reason, Pixar usually focuses on side characters for sequel, like Mater or Dory, and even like Buzz for Lightyear. And I know that they're like main characters, but they're also like side characters when they should focus on the main characters, or maybe even lesser characters to help expand the world. I don't know. Maybe if it was about Nemo growing up or about Gil and what happened to his gang, that'd be more interesting to me. But did we need Finding Dory? I don't think so, but Disney knew it would make money, so here you go. And this brings us to the worst of the worst, the offensive tier. Incredibles 2, in my opinion, is the worst Pixar movie. Sorry, not sorry. Not only is the story weak, the villain lame and nonsensical, time-wise, it's just such a misstep. Whose idea was it for this movie to take place seconds after the first one? Why did they think that was a good idea? I guess because they need to make supers legal again and wrap everything up, but who cares? Just make them legal again, or make a movie about Frozone or Mirage, like anyone else. This isn't to say that a film centering on Elastigirl couldn't have been good, but it just feels like Helen did have a complete arc already that was closed in the first movie. The second one could have been a prequel about her life similar to Monsters U or something. The main theme this time is that screens are bad, which doesn't tie into like anything. And also, are we just never going to talk about Syndrome again or mourn the fallen heroes of Bob and Helen's generation? Like, they just totally forget that they just were traumatized by Syndrome. Like, I don't know, I just don't get it. On the other hand, I do like that Bob isn't emasculated by being a stay-at-home dad, but rather feels inadequate because he can't be the perfect dad. He's a superhero, but he just can't be on all the time, and I think that's a really good lesson. It's a lot better than him resenting his wife, which thankfully they don't do. The raccoon scene is funny, but not enough to save the entire film. For such a strong first movie, the second one just really fell flat. Now onto the fun and heartwarming tier. These movies are some of Pixar's best and, made them known for being the studio that makes you cry. And looking back, surprisingly enough, my favorite Pixar films don't make me cry. And I think that's because it's daunting to rewatch a movie multiple times when you had such a visceral emotional response the first time, because you just can't get that feeling back. And you're afraid, if you watch the movie again, that feeling will be lost. And also, it's daunting to watch a movie that is going to make you cry because you don't always feel like crying. So, it's kind of a turn-off to watch the movie again because you're not, again, always in the mood to have that experience. On the other hand, if you do feel like crying, put on one of these movies. These movies are for you. So, Monsters, Inc., for instance, made me cry like a baby when I rewatched it. But now, I don't want to watch it again for a really long time because of that. But it's in this tier because, it's emotional, but also because it's so much fun. I don't mind, how the Monsters universe is so similar to ours, unlike how I dislike it in Onward, where it's basically, the magical suburbs. I guess because, since humans exist in the monster world, that dichotomy of the human and monster world being almost identical makes it kind of funny. And Randall in this movie, is amazing. He is my favorite Pixar villain. And I also really like Monsters U and the lesson that Mike isn't scary and that's okay. In Monsters U, they of course do the thing where instead of Sully being the main character, they make Mike the main character. And this time it actually works kind of again like with Cars 2 and Mater. Cars 2 is on this list not because it makes you cry, but because it's fun. And I actually really like rewatching it simply because of the pop culture references. And there's just like so much in Cars 2 that they throw at you that it is just fun to rewatch and put on in the background, even if, you're not the biggest fan of like Larry the Cable Guy. Nemo is in this list, and so is Up for their sense of humor. I really like, for example, the initiation ceremony in Nemo. And of course, the dogs in Up are hilarious. And one thing I want to say about Finding Nemo is that I like that they live in a reef and that the ocean is the ocean. They don't try to make it like underwater New York, for example. It really helps make the film more beautiful, more timeless, that they leave the underwater world untouched until they go to the surface world. I found Up to just be a really unique story, along with, of course, Ratatouille. Ratatouille is, of course, on this list on this tier because it was my favorite Pixar film as a kid growing up, but the more I rewatched it, like the reason why it's not on the top tier for me is because I really began to dislike the messaging about stealing that's in the movie. But of course, the soundtrack and ambiance and the scene compositions are amazing and so memorable. I love the rat perspective of the world and the camera angles and action scenes they get with having, a rat as the main character. My favorite sequence of Remy's, there's so many different action sequences to pick from. The boat one, when he's in the kitchen for the first time, but my favorite one is when he's just about to realize that he's been under Paris this whole time and he sees like all these little scenes. It just feels like so cozy and it really sets the mood for the film. It's just an amazing and fun watch and a lot of quick comedy again. And of course, Anton Ego's monologue makes the movie for a lot of people. I guess it would be in the top tier again if it didn't have like the odd messages about stealing. That just like rubs me the wrong way. And I also think maybe I've watched it so much that I'm like kind of sick of it. The last film on this tier that I want to talk about is Luca. Luca is here because like Ratatouille, Nemo, and Up and Monsters, Inc., it's just a fun world to be in. I love the little town where there are hidden sea monsters and the little Vespas and the silent father figure and his cat that like looks exactly like him. It's really memorable as well as fun. I remember saying Silencio Bruno for a while after watching it. It's definitely one of the newer Pixar films that really stuck with me. Basically, all the movies in this tier are high on the list because they're not only like emotionally strong, they're fun to watch, and they bring you into this new world and this universe that you want to be a part of. So that's it for this video. And I really want to emphasize that this is just all my opinion. You're free to have your own favorite Pixar movies. Art is subjective, and I do think that it takes time for movies to grow on us. I do think a reason why I love WALL-E and The Incredibles so much is because they were so formative to me as a child, but also because they are such enduring stories. Nowadays, I think that Pixar is headed in a new and interesting direction, especially with Luca and Turning Red. I love that movies, about periods and trust and friendship are so popular and loved and are being made for kids. I think that's awesome. I can't wait to watch Elemental. And yeah, I think in the end, we put a lot of pressure on Pixar movies to be like masterpiece after masterpiece because of how amazing the first decade was, but studios are going to grow and change and evolve, and that's okay. Art is meant to be challenging and experimental, and again, everyone's going to have their own favorite movie based on their own personal experiences and biases. So let me know your opinions down below, and thanks for watching. If you like this video, please give it a like, subscribe, follow me on Patreon for behind the scenes content and early access, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.